Thank you. Thank you. All right. Now it's for the time you've been waiting for all week. Do English grammar. It's your favorite thing, I know. All right. We are still focusing on the tools to assist us, to help us in diagramming so that we can see the structure of a passage, which will then help us in figuring out the author's intent, what he's trying to communicate. And the tools for this are essentially looking at grammar, how sentences work, how phrases and clauses within those sentences work. And our focus has been on some of the details in the diagramming procedure. We've spent time on looking at the first step, which is to identify that main sentence, that main independent clause in the sentence, because that is the core. You can think of that as the root of the tree. And so everything comes from that in a given paragraph, that independent clause, that main sentence. And then after you identify that, the second step is to figure out the rest of the phrases and the clauses that are in the sentence. And again, we remember that a sentence is essentially made up of an independent clause that presents the central thought, the complete thought, and then there are additional phrases and dependent clauses that are part of that sentence. And remember too, we've seen some examples of this, that sentences can have more than one independent clause. All right, there are times when an author, a scripture will communicate more than one thought. And so I should probably say independent clause or clauses, since sometimes there will be more than one when we have a particular conjunction that connects them. And so what we've been doing is the way to figure this out, how do we identify those separate phrases and clauses? And we do that by finding what I've called the connector words. And so last week we spent some time on conjunctions and looking at those in detail. Essentially, there are 4 types of connector words that we're going to see commonly in Scripture. And I'm going to ask Pastor Jan to tell us at least one of those 4 types of connector words. What are the types of connector words we see in sentences? Pastor Jan?
And.
What kinds of connector words? We had 4 categories, or 4 types.
Oh,
do you remember?
Coordinating?
That is a subcategory of one of the categories, the one we looked at last week. Do you remember what that one was? There were anybody else want to help out? Can you name a particular type of connector word category?
Junction.
Conjunctions, there you go. That's what we spent our time on last week. Conjunctions. What other kinds? Prepositions.
Relative pronouns.
Good. Relative pronouns. And the 4th?
Participles.
Participles. Okay. Those are the connector words that we will see in sentences. There also, punctuation can be a helpful guide, but that's not a particular word. It's a symbol that is used by the interpreter. But what I wanted to do, what we're going to do again this week and the next couple of weeks most likely, is I really want to focus attention on each of these connector words. So last week we started the discussion on conjunctions, and I really want to work on that to help you see not only what what are conjunctions, what words those are, but how do they work? How do they function? Because they connect phrases and clauses a little differently than the other connector words, the prepositions, relative pronouns. And so I think the better you understand how each of them works, the more helpful it'll be. It's kind of like a screwdriver. You know, you have a screw, and there are different kinds of screws, and there are different kinds of screwdrivers. One type of screwdriver is called a flathead. Another type is a Phillips. It's kind of a cross pattern. And so you use screwdrivers for a similar function, but they're not exactly the same. And connector words are like that. They have a similar function in that they connect phrases and clauses to other parts of the sentence, but they do it in a different way. And so I think it's helpful to focus attention on each one of these types of connector words so that we have a better understanding of that. And so let me go to, we didn't quite complete our discussion on the conjunctions. I wanted to look at a couple of more examples in Scripture of those so that we can just get some more practice with that. Write myself a note here. Okay, so let's dig a little deeper and review for a moment on these connector words and the conjunctions in particular. We talked about, and Pastor John was mentioning this just a moment ago, there are two types of conjunctions. There's what we call the coordinating conjunctions. Those will join two parts of a sentence that are grammatically equal, all right? This is really important to understand. And again, grammatically equal. So for example, one could say, I am hungry and I am, and I am thirsty, all right? I'm not the most creative writer of examples, so I apologize for that, but you'll get the idea. I'm an engineering major, right? So I get a pass on being creative with English. So notice here we have two independent clauses that are connected by the word and. They're both of equal importance and they're grammatically the same. I am hungry and I am thirsty. They are grammatically equal, both independent clauses. Or we could say something like, he said to eat the balut or the durian. Okay, now here, these aren't two independent clauses that are being connected, but here the word or, the coordinating conjunction or, connects the objects. So in this case, the balut or the durian they're not independent clauses, they are both objects. Okay, they're grammatically equal and they're connected together by this coordinating conjunction, in this case, the word or. Another example might be, what would be another dependent clause? Let's do that. He is the pastor who preaches well and loves people. Okay, what do I have here? What's the independent clause? He is the pastor, right? That's the main subject verb. That's the complete thought. And notice I have this who, which is modifying pastor. It's telling us something about the pastor who preaches well and loves people. So in this case, I've connected two dependent clauses. Okay, both of these have a subject and a verb. They are dependent clauses. So, and notice, again, both of them share the same subject, but they're not independent clauses, but they are grammatically equal. And again, connected by this word, this conjunction and. So you see that? In this case, the balut is an object of the verb to eat. Durian is, again, object. They're connected. They're equal in grammatically. And then the first example I gave you is they're both independent clauses. All right? So these are examples of coordinating conjunctions. They typically join two parts of a sentence that are grammatically equal. That's why they're called coordinating. Coordinate has the idea of bringing together, of coming alongside, of completing. Okay? So coordinating conjunctions, and you can remember these. I would suggest you try to memorize these because they are very common. And fanboys, for, and, nor, but, or, yet, or so. And this week we have another fanboy. We have, of course, Pastor Jason, who has started the group, but then also Pastor Manny is joining the fanboy group this week, it looks like. So the fanboys are increasing, so we can remember them with the for, and, nor, but, or, yet, or so. Pastor Manny, you look perplexed. Are you okay? Too much information already? Or are you thinking about your next song? Okay, so those are the coordinating conjunctions that we talked about. Now there's a larger category in terms of more types of conjunctions called subordinating. There's many subordinating conjunctions. And there are just a few examples here that I've given you in the notes. Now, the key with the subordinating conjunction is this. They join a dependent clause to a particular word in an independent clause for the most part. But the key thing I want you to understand is they join a dependent clause to the word they modify. All right? A coordinating conjunction joins two parts of a sentence that are grammatically equal. They could be clauses, they could be phrases, they could be words. A subordinating clause it connects a dependent clause to the word that it modifies. Okay, it's not equal. It doesn't connect two things that are grammatically equal. All right. And there are many, many examples. Again, there's a list that I've given you here. Although, because, for, even, so there's several of those. So I would not suggest trying to memorize those, but you want to get familiar with them over time. So last week, I just want to continue in what we were doing before, which is we were looking at some examples. All right, so what I want to do here is just have you identify the conjunctions within the sentence. All right, and then, oops, let me get that out of the way. Okay. All right, so let's have Pastor Renee take on the first one here. This is one we actually did last week, but I thought it would be a good one to start with. Just to simply identify the conjunctions and then what kind they are, if they're coordinating or subordinating.
So then you are no longer strangers and aliens, but you are fellow citizens with the saints and are of God's household. So then.
Okay. So then, and what kind is that?
Yes, it's a subordinating word.
Okay, subordinating conjunction.
Conjunction, I mean.
Oops.
And then the word and.
Okay, good.
Strangers and aliens and then the word but.
Is and coordinating or subordinating?
The word and it is coordinating.
Good, fanboy.
And then the word but, yes, the word but coordinating also.
Okay, good. Any more?
And another word and coordinating.
Very good. All right. Do we see any more? Anybody else see any other ones? Did he capture all the conjunctions? Yes. Very good. Now, we talked about last week, we said the so then, which is introducing the sentence. The independent clause here is you are no longer strangers. But notice here that we have this so then introducing it. And we just said a moment ago that so then is a subordinating conjunction, which means normally they introduce a dependent clause. So what's going on here? Well, as I mentioned to you, that's not the only thing subordinating conjunctions do. They can also present a subordinate thought. They can connect a paragraph or a section or a verse to something that came before it previously. And so sometimes we will have these subordinating conjunctions actually introducing a new paragraph, but it's giving us the link between that paragraph and something that the author has said before. Okay, so a subordinating conjunction actually can have, and a coordinating one too, actually. I'll just say this generally. Conjunctions can begin a paragraph or a sentence, and when they do so, they link the paragraph, I'll just say it, they link it to a previous verse or chapter or even a section of what the author has said before. And we spent some time, we looked at several passages. If you'll remember Ephesians 4:1, that therefore I urge you, Paul says that I urge you to walk in a manner worthy of your calling, or Romans 12:1, therefore I urge you by the mercies of God to present your bodies a living sacrifice. We looked at Hebrews 10. A number of examples where those words therefore, which is defined as a subordinating conjunction, but in those cases actually links back to a large section of Scripture. Sometimes the conjunction will also link back just to the verse before, or a few verses before. And so, as I mentioned to you last session, and I'd encourage you to watch the video if you haven't, if you weren't able to attend last week, but it will really help to understand, okay, what's this so then doing here in this case? This so then, we need to understand the author's flow of thought in order to see how this particular so then is functioning here. And we find in this case that it actually, the so then here connects verses 19 to 22 with chapter 2, verses 11 to 18. All right. Uh-oh. Can you still hear me? I'm having some issues.
Tim, you're quite choppy. I don't know if it's just my connection, but I don't think it's from our end, because everyone is clear. No one's moving choppily from my end here, from our end here. It might be you.
You're a little choppy, Pastor Tim. Yes.
All right. Let me do something here.